Welcome back, gamers. Welcome back to another video thingamajig. I'm, of course, Joshua Joshi Howard, and this is going to be an after-action report of the event that I played in Perth, Australia, the Western Australia Teams Championship, where I was playing with Team Singapore. Before I get too far into this video, I do just kind of want to let you guys know I'm a little stressed out. There's like a lot of stuff going on outside of the game right now. One of the things is like a little bit related. Like my sleep schedule's been kind of out of whack for the past like 2 weeks, just because I have been traveling internationally. I normally live in the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, Greater Seattle area, and I was just in Perth and Sydney, and those are like 8 and 10 hour time differences. So traveling there, has been a lot of I had to adjust there. I was there for about a week. I've gotten back. I've been home for most of a week now. And the sleep schedule has not been great, to put it lightly. I've not normally been someone who has like a particularly normal sleep schedule in general. My mom says I have been like this since I was a small infant, so it has not changed. Um, Beyond that though, there's just like other stuff in my life. I don't really want to get into it too much, but it has been I've been stressed. I've been stressed out for the past week. So, you know, I haven't really been reading the comments a whole lot. I've been fairly open in the past where I am diagnosed depressive, and I also am undiagnosed, probably also ADHD. So, it is what it is. I'm sure there will be kind words in the comments. I do not promise to read them just because it's just been one of those weeks. I got another teams event coming up this weekend, so it should hopefully be good, and I get to see a bunch of my SoCal friends in a couple of weeks. So I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm okay. It's just you know, there's just a lot going on. Anyway, so obviously this is a little bit surprising to people, right? I was playing in Perth, Australia, and I do want to tell you a quick story. So one of the players who initially taught me how to play the game at a more competitive level, his name is Jensen Go. He's the captain of the team that I played with for the WATC. Reached out to me about a month ago and was like, "Hey, we have, lost a player relatively recently, and we need to find a sixth person relatively quickly. I haven't been able to find anyone local. Would you be willing to come out to Perth, Australia? I will pay for the flights. I will pay for your lodging. You basically just have to get here and play." And so my very first thought was, of course, like, hey, firstly, do you understand how much money that is going to be? That is going to be like 1,500 US for the flights, and then everything else. It's a lot of money. He's like, yes, I understand. So I'm like, okay, let me look into it. So immediately after that, I started looking into it a little bit more. And one of the first things that happened was that I realized, oh, Perth is not where I thought it was in Australia. I thought Perth was where Brisbane is, which is like northeastern Australia. Perth is like as far west in Australia as you can basically go. So I took a look at some of the flights. I took a look at like what the travel would look like, and I realized, oh, this is going to be about 20-ish hours in the air each direction. I have to go from Seattle to Vancouver, Canada. Vancouver has an international direct flight to Sydney, and then it's like another 5 hour flight, depending on time zones exactly, from Sydney to Perth. And then I got to do that again in reverse on the way back. That's a lot of flying. So I realized, hey, if I'm going to be spending this much time in the air, I will spend about as much time flying to the event as I will actually at the event in Perth. So I looked into my options to extend my stay a little bit. So I ended up staying like 2 days in Sydney, and then I spent like 3 days, 2.5 days over in Perth. I got in Friday night, Thursday evening. I don't remember exactly what day I got in. It must have been Friday. No, I got in Thursday because then we went to Rottnest Island. Anyway, I got to spend a couple days with some cool people. I got to meet up with a couple members of my Discord, who are both members of the Sydney Warhammer community, and I got to, of course, play several days over in Perth. It was a great time. I did have a minor heart attack, not a literal heart attack, but like a oh my god, because one of my buddies messaged me and was like, "Hey, it is my understanding that you will probably be boarding the plane in order to come to Sydney right about now." And I looked and I freaked out because in my mind I was like, "My flight's not today. My flight is the next day." Um, and then I looked at the itinerary I sent them, and that also said that my flight was that day, right? The day that he was like, hey, it's supposed to be right now. So I'm freaking out a little bit. I call my team captain. And I'm like, hey, I might have messed up. Let me see what I can do to fix this. Um, So I immediately go to like my Google Calendar and like double check what everything is, and everything was fine. My flight going from Seattle to Vancouver to Sydney was in fact when I thought it was. It just turns out that the itinerary that I sent to my friends was incorrect. So, I got very stressed out and it ended up being kind of a nothing burger. I ended up getting to Sydney. I just spent one fewer day in Sydney than I had expected, but that's kind of how it works. Anyway, I got to spend a day in Sydney. I went around like the waterfront. I got to hang out with I don't know if I should use his real name, but he goes by Bob Likes Beer. So if anybody knows who that is. And then I got to spend most of the day at Taronga Zoo, and then I got on a plane, flew over to Perth. While there, I got to hang out with a lot of the members of Team Singapore, or they also call themselves South Johor, and we went to Rottnest Island. I'll try and throw up some photos of quokkas here. And from there, we got to spend 2 days. It was 5 rounds at the WATC, playing up against mostly, actually, all Australian teams. So that was a lot of fun. Now, for this event, of course, we had like 36, 48 hours or something between like the new patch coming out and list submission actually being due. So it was a lot of like relatively last minute switches. And so I told my captain very quickly, like, hey, the army that I was just playing, Scintillating Legion, that I was kind of, maybe not expecting, but like looking to potentially play at this event, just got gutted. It went up like 100 points. Also, the Infernal Puppeteer doesn't work. I can't play this anymore. It's not good. I can maybe play it in Purge the Foe, but even then it's like, eh. So I basically said, look, with like less than 2 days, I do not have time to learn another army. The other big thing is I will not be getting reps between like list submission and when I actually show up to the event because I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be in Australia. And I will not have time to actually play games. So they're like, okay, makes sense. Can you build me an army that can play priority assets and will be able to play relatively well up into things like Orcs Take and Hold? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. So this is what I ended up coming to. I was playing this one in Siege Regiment and Bridgehead Strike, which has been relatively interesting recently and got a little bit more interesting due to the fact that Scions did get a recent buff. The 10-man units of Scions went down 5 points. I was playing Command Squad and 10 Scions, one of them with volley guns. I had a Cadian Command Squad, a Cadian Castellan with Stalwart's Honors. This is the one that gives you take cover basically all the time, as long as you're not battle shocked and you have an order at all. 20 Cadians, another Command Squad with 10 Scions, this time with Melta guns. This is partly a limitation of like what kind of models I had. I can do one unit with volley guns, but I simply don't have the models for 2 units with volley guns. And if I was like specifically trying to play up against orcs, this definitely would have been volley guns. But I think I got, I don't want to say lucky, but in retrospect, I almost wish that this one also had melta guns because I could have done that. However, I could not have known what the rest of the meta would have looked like at the time. Gaunt, of course, Nork Deddog. You'll see he is not attached. One of the things that has been coming up, and this might get fixed at some point, but it's not currently. Nork Deddog currently joins a unit in the declare battle formation step, which is after you know like what you're playing against. So you do not have to attach Nork in the list building step. You can do it game to game. And most of the time, he's going to be running around with the Cadians. However, if you need to stick one of the Scion units on the board because you're worried that your opponent is going to run at you, you will put Nork with the Scion unit. Also, we had Ursula Creed running on by herself. We had 2 Chimeras, both with heavy flamers. 2 units of Cadian Recon, who I also borrowed from Bob Likes Beer. He's got great models that look really good, and hopefully they got back to him safe. I gave it to his friend. I had 1 Catachan Lascannon. I didn't really want to put this in the list, partly because it's like, it doesn't really... If I'm trying to like just go kill infantry, it's like not super good at that, but I could not come up with anything better for the 65 points. So in they go. 2 units of Kasrkin, Melta Plasma, 2 units of Krieg Engineers with I have a slight preference for like trench clubs and auto pistols. But right now, honestly, you could probably go with the shotguns because Spectacle of Spite is way less popular now. So shotguns might be a little bit better. It's just mostly, I'll call it inertia. I haven't had a reason to change. 2 Scout Sentinels with Lascannons pointed at stuff, and then 2 units of Aquilons. I love Aquilons. They're super cool. They're some of my favorite models in the entire range. And one of the big things that I was talking about with, I'll call him my coach. He's not officially my coach, but I ask him a lot of questions. He was like, hey, I'm trying to build a list that is going to do well into orcs. And he was like, well, instead of taking a 3rd Scion brick, What if you took 2 units of Aquilons and then 60 points of whatever? So this is what they come into, and there's a couple cool tricks that you can do with Aquilons. The first one is because similar to how you can do this with Baharoth and 10 Swooping Hawks, you do not need to bring in all of your reserves at the end of the movement phase. You can do them during the movement phase. And a couple of things that you can do that are kind of cool is one, because it is your drop turn for the Bridgehead Strike, you get that +1 hit when you drop. If you can set it up such that you are also getting this one model plunging fire with this 6-inch drop, you can get this hotshot volley gun from hitting on 4's base to +1 ballistic skill from plunging fire, +1 to hit from the drop turn from Bridgehead Strike. And so you can get this gun to be hitting on 2's base. And so if you're shooting something out of cover, that's 8 shots of hotshot volley gun on 2's. That's actually going to pick up a fair number of cultists or anything else T3. If you can't get both the plunging fire as well, or yeah, if you can't get the plunging fire as well, you go to hitting on 3's base. So oftentimes you're going to be hitting on 4's because the things are in cover. But this will oftentimes clear up a little bit of space, especially if they have like cultists or some guardsmen or something. You can oftentimes clear up a couple of models in order to create a little bit of extra space. The other big thing is it's just a fair number of shots, right? You have 16, yeah, you have 8 normal las carbines. So that's 16, 24, 25, 27 shots of, we won't say high quality, but like low to medium quality. You don't need super high quality shots when you're shooting at orcs in general. You mostly just need to wound, and then you'll oftentimes kill a boy from there. And so this adds an extra 50 odd shots when you're going to be shooting at orcs, which is a really big deal. They were they were good. They weren't great, but they were still good. So I did like this. The big thing about this list and why it's a relatively large departure from something that we've been seeing from like Nemo or Tucker with all of the Lascannons is I was told to build something that, again, playing priority assets, and 2, is tailored to be relatively good at playing up against orcs. And I do think this accomplishes especially that second goal. I would be fairly comfortable playing this up against a lot of different orc lists. You got a lot of shooting, you have enough trash, and you have like some flavors. Like you just have a lot of shots of medium quality that you can throw down range, and you're going to be able to beat up orcs fairly efficiently. However, I did not feel particularly well. However, I did not feel particularly well suited to the meta that we ended up finding ourselves in at the event. So here's like a brief snapshot of like what we were kind of looking at the event overall. And you can see that there was a lot of take and hold orcs. And I felt reasonably comfortable into this, one, because the priority assets into take and hold is a pretty drawish mission in general. And 2, I had tailored my list in order to be relatively good at killing orcs. I had the tools to stop the equatorial hordes from just like scouting and just killing me at the very beginning. I had the tools necessary to actually kill big bricks and green tide. And if you can do those 2 things, you're generally pretty well equipped to deal with orcs. The real problem that I was kind of facing is that a lot of these Thousand Suns lists were taking Magnus, and I did not really have good answers to Magnus. I did not have really good answers to Imperial Knights. I did not have good answers to something like Mortarion. I did not have good answers to something like a Land Raider Redeemer. And so overall, my entire list was just like having some problems dealing with these really big targets, which is, I was kind of told don't necessarily build your list to deal with these things. And so it ended up meaning that I did not have as many good matchups as I wanted. And I think in retrospect, I do kind of wish I had all of those Lascannons, or I'd played something a little bit more traditional, like with Bulgrin and Dorans, or honestly, even maybe like a super heavies list, just because I think those would have been a little bit more well-rounded. I was not one of the players that was being asked to like go get wins. By having something a little bit more stable, having something that playing something that had a little bit more strong matchups across the board, I think would have been more helpful for something where it's just like, here you go, just go play a game. So with that in mind, for our first round, we ended up playing up against a team called the Leftovers, and I played up against Jared and his Adeptus Custodes. Now, one of the big things about playing up against Custodes with this list is I'm pretty actually good at killing infantry. It becomes a little high variance because of the 4-up invuls, but it's a little high variance because of the 4-up invuls, but with full reroll, but with access to full reroll hits, with access to 2s rerolling 1s, and then reroll wounds. I actually just had like a lot of tools to rip through the Custodes relatively quickly if I actually had the opportunity to attack them. Jared was playing Lions of the Emperor and Might of the Moritoi, and I don't actually know what that one does, but I do say that it comes up fairly often. He had a Shield Captain and Alaris Terminator with Edmona Mortis to hit really hard, attached to 5 Alaris Custodians, a Shield Captain with, I think this is the stand back up, and then 5 more Alaris Custodians, Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jetbike with 2 Virtus Praetors, 1 unit of 5 Custodian Guard, 1 unit of Prosecutors, 1 Telemon, and then 2 units of 3 Venatari Custodians. And overall, like looking at this list, like killing Ilaris is not actually that difficult because the fact that they go from 2 or 3 wounds to 4 wounds is a problem for some armies that have a lot of damage 3, but I don't have very much of that. I just have a lot of damage 2 and a lot of plasma. So the difference there is not very big between the 2 units. So I can actually kill the Ilaris reasonably well. And the same thing with the Verse Praetors, because even just like killing one of them is a really big deal. If I can actually go out and like use my Chimera and Kasrkin in order to actually get to this unit, I can deal with this. The problem, weirdly, is actually just these 2 units of Venatari. And because of this, there is a game plan that Custodian has in this, depending on whether they go first or second, that gives them a lot of tools. And this really comes down to the fact that the Custodians have the free rapid ingress on 2 units of Venatari, so you can do a triple rapid ingress. And then you are oftentimes going to be keeping like 1 unit of Alaris, maybe it can be the Verse Praetors, whatever it is. There's going to be 1 additional unit that's going to be like trying to play relatively far back. And the general game plan here is going to be different based on whether or not you go first or second. Talk about me being over here, and then talk about Jared being over here. Okay. And we were playing Priority Assets versus Take and Hold, where the Priority Assets player just sits and they press the cleanse button on this objective over and over and over. If you do that, you're almost always going to be scoring max primary. You can do it like here as well if you wanted to, but the Custodian player generally wants to hold like these 2 and just do that over and over and over again. So realistically, you're both gonna be scoring pretty high primary. Let's talk about the game plan and the real danger. So let's first talk about what happens if the Custodians go first. So Custodians go first and Guard goes second. So generally, what the Custodian player can do is they're gonna have stuff here, maybe some stuff like here, whatever. They're going to go up and they're going to try and take a little bit of board space, right? They're going to put some stuff on the back of this objective, something that is here, it can like move over here. You're going to stage over here. If you feel safe being able to stage here, you can do that as well. But it's mostly just a staging turn. You're going to be trying to take up a little bit of space if you go first. And then on the first turn for the guard player, you're going to go up, you're going to hit the cleanse button, you're going to kind of come, you're going to stage a little bit here. You're going to try and do it in such a way that the Custodian player can't really get to you. But, you're going to get a decent amount of points because you're just going to hit the cleanse button and you're going to grab some points. Okay. Now, on the Custodian second turn, you're going to be trying to find some space, right? You're going to look to see if there are any like big charges. You're going to try and like stage relatively close here. You want to stage like relatively close over here, or you can put like the Vertus Praetors here where they can come like fight and fade, go like there, and then go immediately back. And then the guard player, if the Custodian player is doing this well, the guard player can't really get to you, right? They can potentially drop like Scions over here to like shoot this, but we'll get to the next big problem. If the guard player comes out and does that, you can just drop, like as soon as the guard player drops over here, the Venatari can like drop over here, and you'll be able to get there on the next turn. So the guard player doesn't really want to do that. And so we'll get to what happens when we go into the next turn, right? The guard player has the Scions, and the Scions are really the only good tool you have for dealing with a brick of Alaris Custodians, right? They have a lot of plasma. It's going to be rerolling wounds, at least once to wound, maybe everything to wound. You're going to be trying to look for those rerolling wounds against the Alaris, and then you can pick up the entire brick in one go. However, you don't want to do it because as soon as you do it, you lose a lot of your threat on the rest of the army, right? Your Aquilons are going to be doing a lot of wounding on 6s against Custodians. Your Cadians are going to be doing a lot of wounding on 6s, saving on 2s against Custodians. Nork will maybe kill, 1 or 2 Custodians on his own, but he needs to get that charge off, and then he needs to get into combat. So it's like a little bit spooky on its own. So the Scions, they don't really want to drop, right? The Scions are waiting to see where the Alaris are going, and then the Scions are going to try to hunt the Alaris, which is generally going to be the big thing that you're doing. And so if you go where the red player goes first, and then they go turn, and then you pass the turn, and the guard player tries to like take a little bit of space, make sure they're scoring, and then the Custodian player again kind of has a null turn, and the guard player again has kind of a null turn. The guard player will be looking at like a small lead as long as they're drawing reasonably well and as long as they're like doing their primary, which is mostly uncontested. But then what happens is the Custodian player kind of comes up, takes a little bit of space, and then the guard player has to bring in all of the Scions here, right? You're bringing in your entire army. You're bringing in like, I want to say like 800 points. So you have the Scion brick, Aquilon brick, and you have to bring them all in here. And the problem with this is as soon as this happens, this is when you triple ingress both Venatari and an Alaris brick. And now the custodian player has complete control of the board, and the game ends. Right, the custodian player is going to go out. You're gonna make sure that one of your characters gets into the Nork brick. You're gonna go try and tag the Cadian Castellan brick and precision out the Castellan. If you do it with like the Admana Mortis captain, or you do it with like the Virtus Praetors with like the Captain Dawn Eagle jet bike, you are very consistently going to be killing the Castellan, and then as soon as you do that, the unit can no longer fall back and shoot, and therefore is no longer a damage threat. Nork maybe kills like one custodian, maybe two custodians on the swing back. And then the Venatari are going to go in. They're going to, on turn 4 down here, they're going to come touch the Scions. They're going to come touch like the Aquilons. They're going to come they're going to like ingress somewhere in like here, and they're just going to touch everything. And then you can like get a potential blowout here with custodians if you do this well. So the guard player kind of wants to like push out really aggressively on turn 2 so that the Venatari feel like they have to come in early. And that's more or less what happened in this game, is I tried to push relatively aggressively in order to try and force my opponent to bring the Venatari on turn 2. My opponent did, and then as soon as that happened, I dropped my Scions, I kill one of the Alaris bricks, I do enough with like, I chip away with like Kasrkin and Chimeras in order to deal with like the Venatari that came in on turn 2 and then became active on turn 3. I dropped like Aquilons back over here to deal with girls, and then I just tried to spread the board out relatively effective. And as soon as that happens, as soon as the Scions get to come in to deal with the, I think there was like an Alaris brick like here, and then like the other one rapid ingress on 3 like here, I think. The game becomes a draw, right? Because I'm going to be maxing primary as a priority assets player. My opponent's going to do pretty well in primary, probably score about 40, partly because they're going first, and they're, I'm trying to stop them from getting like the hold mores and the hold the centers and whatever. And then it just becomes a game of who's going to be scoring better on cards, and that should generally be the guard player just because you have more things in general. And that's more or less what happened in the game. When Jared ended up bringing in both Venatari units, I think one of them came like here. I think the second one came over here. This one came over here and like got a charge into engineers or something like that. And then these ones came out like this way. I don't remember exactly what they did. But the biggest point is like they did not come and touch the Scions. You don't want to let them touch the Scions. And so I had a conversation with Jared at the end of this game because it did end up coming out to a 10-10, 94-92 in Jared's favor. Or I think this is one where he actually had the tools necessary to try and push it a little bit more aggressively. So if you're ever in a matchup kind of like this one where you are playing the army with like triple or quadruple or sometimes more rapid ingresses, and you're going first, this is something you're very consistently looking to try and set up. You're going to try and get a turn where your opponent is entirely on the board, and then you're just going to run over them with like your triple, quadruple, pentuple rapid ingresses all at the same time. And then the main thing that you have to do is you need to make sure that you have the tools necessary to stop your opponent from just taking board space up against you. And, having the Virtus Praetors here, the bikes here, made that difficult because they could come out, and then I would have like a Chimera here, and then they would kill the Chimera, and then they would run immediately back, and like I can't really get to them. I can't drop my Scions to go get them because then they will just die to the Venatari or the Alaris immediately after that. So you just need to make sure that you project enough threat where you can actually go for this. And then the flip side of this is like, as the guard player, the thing that you're trying to do is you're trying to force them to come out early, and then if you can get this Alaris unit to like charge something that is like on here, like engineers or something, so you can have like engineers and like a scout sentinel just hanging out on this objective that they have to deal with both, and they might not kill both of them in shooting. If you can do this and force these units to come out relatively early, you can make your opponent's like big swing happen in piecemeal. So if you have the unit count to actually be aggressive with this, you can try and force them to play with you earlier than they actually want to. But you just have to be careful about which unit. So if you're going to be doing this and you get the Alaris to come out like over here and they're like standing on this objective, if you can then take dudes and go like out here and like more dudes and come out here, and then the Venatari are dropping here while your Scions are dropping like over here where they can kill them, the Venatari are now no longer going to kill the Scions because it's simply too far. And if you can set up that situation, that's what you're trying to do with the guard, the team that doesn't have all the rapid ingresses all at the same time. As it was though, Jared was super fun to play against. But the overall game plan and I believe in the game very much a draw. And overall, my team did pretty well. The two players that we were setting up to generally get relatively big wins, Yangcheng or YQ as you might hear we call him, and then Jensen, the captain, both getting relatively big wins. Paul swinging up into Paul swinging up into a game that we were kind of expecting to be draw-ish, and then Wesley, Timothy, and me all getting the draws that we were kind of expecting. So that left us with a pretty big 86-34. For my next game, I ended up playing up against Cam, and he was playing Freebooter, Crew, Mordaka, and Take and Hold. And this is something that I had built my list in order to feel pretty good about my options into this kind of thing. He had Snickra, Wazdaka. Oh, he named the attached units. He had a Big Mech with shock attack guns with tank bustas. 20 boys with Gaz and a Pain Boy. 20 boys with a Pain Boy and a War Boss. 20 more boys with a Pain Boy and a War Boss. 20 Gretchen with Zodgrod. A Daka Rig, and then 2 additional units of 10 Gretchen. So one of the big things I know about the math when taking a unit of Scions, shooting it at one of these Pain Boy units is if you set it up correctly, you will just kill the unit about 70% of the time, just gone, including the Pain Boy. Like it will just die. You do have to spend a strat in order to make it happen, but you just got to make sure you are just going to go through and you're going to rip through a lot of these units. Sometimes you have to spend the 2 CP on the Bridgehead Strike for the +1 strength, +1 AP. It matters a lot for the volley guns, going from wounding on 5s to wounding on 4s, because it's just 15 shots of +1 to wound. But generally, you're going to be spending the 1 CP on the full reroll hits if you need to, or on the extra shots if you do have the reroll ones to hit from a Scout Sentinel. And then the other big thing is you need this unit of boys to be on an objective. If you can get them on objective, that's when you get through. So everything that you need to set up in order to get to like this very confidently killing through all the boys, they need to be on objective so you have the reroll wounds. You need to be full rerolling either from the 1 CP siege strat or from a Scout Sentinel and ignores cover. And the whole Scion unit needs to be shooting. If you can set up those 3 things, you should be very confident that you're going to be ripping through the entire boys unit. Now, like for production, Josh, I played the same board. It was still take and hold versus priority assets. So again, I'm just trying to do cleanses over and over again. And my opponent's just trying to hold a bunch of objectives all at once. So I end up going first in this game. And one of the funniest things that happens immediately is I take a unit like here, who is deployed in order to be opposite of Zodgrod. And the whole thing here is they're just trying to block Zod from like scouting and messing my day up immediately. And I draw outflank. And I want to take this unit and I want to shoot it into Zodgrod. Just kill some of those Grots, make it a little bit more difficult to actually like jail me with this Grot unit, and also just kind of be in the way. And so I got to be like, 6 inches is something like this. So I come over here, trail a couple of guys like this in order to create a wall here. And Cam just rips an Overwatch on me. And he kills with just a unit of boys. He's not in the wall. He doesn't have the sustained or anything. And he just kills it outright. And I go, you mean I don't even have 1, so I don't even score like outflank on turn 1? I wasn't necessarily expecting to kill like a ton of Gretchen here, but not a single one lives. I was a little, that was like the first moment where like, oh, this is not good. That unit was, I was expecting to be able to like shoot all of this, or at least shoot some of it into the Gretchen unit and get like a couple of them, and also just have that wall there. But it meant that I didn't score outflank. It meant that I didn't kill any Gretchen with that unit. And it was like, oh god, this is not how this unit is supposed to go. You're not supposed to just like lose this unit outright at the beginning. So then after that, it's my opponent's turn, and he puts like 1 Pain Boy unit, something like this. He puts the other Pain Boy unit, something like this. And because they're playing a freebooted crew, they do want to be touching an objective, so you have the option to put them in the wall for 1 CP. And so this was touching objective, this was touching this objective, and I go over and I tell my captain, hey, things are lining up. I'm going to go for it. This is what I know the math is supposed to look like. I'm going to try and pick up these units. And then there's like a Zodgrod unit somewhere in here, and then there's like Gaz and the boys, something like this. And so on this turn, I take like a unit of Aquilons, drop here, I drop another unit of Aquilons over here, and I try and like shoot at the tank bustas here, and I do a little bit of shooting at the Gretchen, I try and shoot at the tank bustas. I only kill 1 tank busta, like through both sets of double volley guns and then like all of their shooting, because the tank bustas, again, just overwatch and leave this on 1. And I go, what the what is going on? This is not how this is supposed to go. Or maybe I think it was Gaz actually that did it. And they just like kill the unit. And I go, what the heck is going on? So it goes down to one model. But the other big thing is I set up a unit over here, like Scions come over here, more Scions come over here, where they can see boys somewhere, and like both entire units are shooting. And I think I got a scout sentinel like pointing at one of them. I think I got a scout sentinel like over here in order to like see a boy this way, I think is what it was. And so we've gotten to the spot, we've set up, they're not getting cover because I've been able to use the siege off-board artillery to ignore cover on both these units. This one is touching objective here. I'm getting my reroll ones, hitting on twos because it's a drop turn, and I'm ignoring cover. And rerolling objectives. And so I end up giving this one extra shots from the like rapid fire one. This one over here, I give full reroll hits over here. And then we go into the shooting phase. And then I actually start like doing my damage. This one, hitting on twos, rerolling ones. I got 3 guns, and they each get 3 shots. And there's a pistol for a 10th shot. On twos re-rolling with sustained, I got 7 hits. And then I go to do my wounds, and they're on 3s re-rolling because they're an objective. This unit passed him 4 plasma saves. 4 plasma saves. I was a little bit frustrated. The math says that these 10 shots are supposed to, on average, kill 9 boys. And 75% of the time, you're supposed to kill between 7 and 11. I killed 4. That happens about 1.2% of the time. That was atrocious. So I go through, and then I continue shooting at this unit, and this unit goes from 20 plus the pain boy and the war boss to, it's like 5. It's like 5 plus characters. So this is a colossal low roll. This is supposed to be way better than that. And then I go to the other side, where I'm popping extra shots. I'm on 2s rerolling 1s because they are not in cover from the detachment. So my drop turns, I'm hitting on 2s. I normal rapid fire and super rapid fire. And over here, I also low roll pretty bad. This one I don't low roll anywhere near as bad, but this one my reroll wounds was just like not going off. And I rolled a lot of 1s into 1s to hit. And so this unit ends up being like, I think it was like 1 plus characters, something like that. And it is like, it got really, really close at the end. And so as soon as this happens, I go talk to my captain and be like, I colossally low rolled. These are both supposed to be like 70% to kill. Neither of them killed. In fact, both pain boys are still alive. This is a problem. So, I go over, I take this charge, my 9-inch, and I hit it. And so, like, at least these Scions are like in combat over here with these boys. But these, I can't do it. I just need to have them there, ready to go for next turn, and hopefully I can get an Overwatch off with them so that I can kill this unit. Because if I can get this Overwatch off, and if I can kill this unit, then my opponent is basically playing the game with like Zod and a Gas Brick. And this Gas Brick is going to do whatever it wants, but I've already done enough. And like I still have like a Cadian Brick that's like hanging out over here that, if given the opportunity, will kill a lot of boys if it has an opportunity to actually go into the unit, especially if I can do both the shooting and the charge. Things would be looking totally fine. So luckily, at the very least, when I get my Scions over here and we do the combat, I do kill the last boy, and I do manage to kill, I think he took the saves on the pain boy first. Something like that. He took them on an order that was a bit surprising to me, is what I remember. And so at least I stopped this unit from being a thing. But the other thing was when the pain boy like brings dudes back, and I think there's a strat in Freebooted Crew that lets you bring more boys back. There's like boys here, and then they came over here, and they were able to like stand in such a way that I wasn't really able to like get my Overwatch off. And so they end up getting a charge off, and then they're just creating a lot of. And the Gaz unit just like came here, like charged a Chimera or something. And the turn after that, like went into the wall again because it was touching objective, and then it rolled a legitimately a boxcar roll into like being on my home objective. And so, I was a little bit concerned over this one because I had this, I thought this was going to be a very comfortable like 10. When I saw that both these units were like on objective, I was like, okay, it's my go turn. I gotta try and take care of both these units, and if this goes well, I'm probably looking at like a 15. And then when they both failed to kill, I still came back with an 8. So it ended up being a spot where my opponent had like a decent amount of tools in order to like deny my primary, but because it is so easy to score a lot of your primary on this mission for the Proteasis player, I still got 36 primary on this one. I still got 35 secondary, so I got myself up to 81. And while my opponent did max his own primary, he wasn't able to max out on all of his secondaries as well because he just kind of ran out of like units running around to do things, and he just had to like they just had to keep on charging into things. So he wasn't able to do like all of the actions that the game particularly wanted him to do. But this was a game where like I thought it was going to be pretty drawish. I saw an opportunity. I missed two 70%, and then I still came back with an 8. So I was a little bit frustrated. I do want to apologize a little bit to Cam because like when I saw how badly my Scions were rolling, there was at least one point where I rolled, just looked at it, I stepped away for 2 seconds. I was I like it was such a colossal low roll because I remember it was the Scion plasmas that like really drove me nuts. Where I was like, okay, so I know 2's rerolling with sustained. You're supposed to average something in the neighborhood of like 11 to 13 hits. I got 7, and then 3's rerolling. You're supposed to get 88%, so I'm supposed to get 6 or 7 wounds. I got 4, and I was just like, what is going on? This is not how this is supposed to work at all. So it was a little bit frustrating overall. I came back with an 8 in a matchup that I feel I was supposed to do a little bit better in, but I don't feel bad about the way that I played the game. I just feel like the dice were really not in my favor. Cam was great though. He got me a beer at the very beginning, and he could tell that I was a little bit frustrated in the middle, but he just kept on being great. So I really appreciate his attitude the entire time, even when I was not particularly happy. Overall, though, the rest of my team ended up doing more or less what we were kind of expecting. YQ got a 20, Jensen got a 20, and then the rest of us were in that drawish range. And this was more or less like the total game plan. Like the main game plan we had overall was, we would get like 4 close-ish games, and then 2 people were going to try and come back with big wins. So we finished that. We're currently 2-0. Let's go to the third one. My third game, I ended up playing up against Marcus and his Votan with triple 1DP detachments, Armored Trailblazers, Farseekers, and Hearthguard Covenant. Now, I don't know what all of this does. I know like it gives you Scout on your I know it gives like your Sagittars like Scout or something, and like one of them becomes mobile. I know it gives your Hearthguard like really good rerolls, so it's a pretty good like 1DP in general. And I don't know what Farseekers does at all, to be entirely honest. So in Marcus' list, he had a Call with 10 Hearthguard, in each champ with 5 Hearthguard, Barrack Stormbrow, which is I think is the guy that runs around with Berserks, which they were attached. Bury, 2 units of 10 Hearthkin that were split into 4 5s, a Capricus carrier, which is the Jaeger transport, 1, 2, 3, 4 Sagittars, one of which has the mobile keyword, 2 units of 3 Thunderkin, 1 unit of Berserks that was attached to 1 more unit of Hearthguard without a character, 2 units of Pioneer Bikes, and 1 unit of Jaegers split into 2 5s. Now, the Priority versus Disruption mission is kind of cool because the like lore behind it is that you're both fighting over there's like a relic, some kind of artifact that you guys are both trying to secure. The disruption player will put out 5 tokens, and in this one there's not a ton of options. There's going to be one here, one here, one here, one here, and one here. And what you do is you take turns doing actions on the middle objective, and you have to do the action on the middle objective. And each time you do one of these actions, you'll be like, I'm going to remove this marker, I want to remove this marker, etc., etc. And then towards the end of the game, typically on turn 3 onwards, there's usually only one marker, and it's usually the one in the middle. But whoever stands on that marker for the rest of the game, if they are the only one on that, it represents like you like digging deep and like pulling out the artifact. Whoever ends up with the artifact gets a bunch more points towards the end of the game. Now, this game had one of the similar issues that I had in my Custodes game, whereas my opponent went first, and therefore he gets the last thing to come in on the board. He gets to bring in a unit of Hearthguard Terminators after my entire army is on the board, and so my Scions do not get to react to where the Hearthguard are going to be coming into. And this is because Marcus ends up going first. And I do legitimately think that the game kind of flips a little bit based on who actually gets to go first in this one, because you get a ton of board control off of it, and matchup where we both have just like a lot of stuff running around. And then the other big thing that you get to do that does change really heavily is whoever goes first also gets to bring in the last thing, right? If I go first, it means that I'm going to be rapid ingressing Scion somewhere safe in the bottom of 3, and my opponent will not be able to do anything about it unless they can bomb like a really long charge, but depending on how the board is like shaking out, I can set myself up such that those Scions will not get shot. But my opponent goes first, and because of that, he's got like dudes here. He's got like Buggy, Sagittar, whatever. And he just creates like a ton of space, right? Buggy comes out here and like hits a fairly long charge into like unit of engineers. I was like 2 units of engineers here. I had like a Chimera here, and then like this Chimera like came out over here, put a wall of Jaegers here. And my like major concern, right, is I need to start screening for the Hearthguard immediately because I have like a cast on brick with like Nork to end up taking up like this kind of space. And I have to give up like a Scout Sentinel here in order to like make sure that there's no angle coming in onto these guys. But one of the major problems that I generally have in this is one, my opponent is faster, and two, like his quality of like skirmishing pieces is actually like higher than mine is in 11th edition. I don't think that was true in 10th edition, but in 11th edition, he does pretty well because like his Thunderkin, with the crits just hit, you kind of don't really care about cover. He's faster, and can his Sagittars can plausibly kill my transports, and my transports cannot plausibly kill his Sagittars. So when he's got like Sagittar, just ready to go like out this way, it's hard for me to dislodge this. And as soon as like one of the Sagittars gets like over here and is like able to like move fast enough through here in order to like draw line of sight into things here, I don't have a lot of safe staging, and I don't really have like great places to like drop things in general. Probably the biggest thing that happened in this game that keeps it from being a total blowout is relatively early on, Marcus ends up bringing in, I think it was the Einherjar champ and then like 5 other Terminators. And they like drop here, and I think they like shoot at the Sentinel or something. Like they shoot at like Kasrkin, something to this effect. But the Nork brick that is hanging out over here ends up coming out this way, and they end up making the charge into this unit. I shoot enough of them, so there's like 2 of the dudes, and then like there's Einherjar champ left. And then the thing is, this unit is able to take up so much space, and the E-champ is not very fast. He only moves like 5 inches, such that this is too far. The distance between the back of this model here and getting it out of engagement range was too far. So this unit was not allowed to fall back at all. Drenson calls this the pro gamer move, where you tie something up and then their shooting army can't do anything about it. So I was able to get this unit here safely, where it was not going to get shot, and ended up scoring me a couple of primary. Ended up scoring me like a couple of extra points. I ended up killing a couple of extra units because I was able to pull this super gamer move off. But one of the other big things about this is, unfortunately, I did not roll high enough on my resing of dudes, and my opponent was able to put enough OC on this objective. I think he got up to like, I want to say like 18 OC, and I was only able to get like, I think it was like 17, because like the characters are only 1 apiece to start. But either way, if I had rolled like a 2 on my D3, that would have been another diff point that I would have gotten for my team. But other than that, this was kind of a problem because he was out skirmishing me really heavily. He had enough units such that he was able to like create a lot of space for himself. And I had to start split firing my Scions in order to try and like get diff back wherever I could in order to like kill things. And unfortunately, split fire is not a very consistent way to get things dead. I do remember I did drop at least 1 diff on account of just forgetting to do a thing. Like I had like the Chimera here, and I got the Kasrkin out like this, but they weren't touching the objective. And when I failed to kill like the last Thunderkin over here, because I had missequenced something, I took like Scout Sentinel and it tried to shoot after, but this guy then became hidden, and I needed to shoot him first, such that these Kasrkin would be able to shoot if Marcus had left anything on the objective. I ended up losing 4 points because I just forgot to push the button. So overall, I think this one was a little bit rough. Again, because my opponent got to take over all the board space that he wanted to at the beginning. And then 2, because he got the last drop. So he ended up like taking his last drop of like Hearthguard over here after I'd already like brought in my Scions like somewhere over here in order to try and take some control of the board back in order to get some primary somewhere. And it meant that this was an easy charge immediately afterwards. So this one was my worst game of the event, and one that I thought probably could have been okay, but realistically I think was just high variance, because whoever is able to like take control of this is going to have a good time. And because the fear that I had with the Hearthguard bricks just ripping this one apart, because it's just a lot of volume and it's a lot of and it's a lot of blast going into the unit. It ended up being a situation where it was really hard for me to like jump out towards the end. I ended up coming back with this one with a 4, which was pretty tough because overall we needed, I think it was 2 more points. I think a 56 would have been a draw, is what I was told. And unfortunately, mine was the biggest issue here. YQ continued doing the job, getting 320s in a row. But unfortunately, I think in general, we all kind of, but I think in general, this was a rough round for us. Well, I think a couple other players also came in under what they were initially projecting. I was definitely the farthest underneath projection. And when we lose by only a couple of points, feels pretty tough. So we end the first day 2-1 before we go into the second day. Our first game in round 4, we end up playing up against Light and Approved, and I play up against Jake O'Grady, who I'm told is a former Team Australia player, which is pretty cool. I end up playing against Jake and his Imperial Knights, and I told my team immediately, like, guard into Imperial Knights is generally okay. However, my list is not particularly well suited to killing this. And if we end up going to a spot where my opponent just like goes first and shoves on me, I could be in some really deep trouble. Jake was playing 2 Knight Defenders, which do like okay damage, but they give a 4-up invul to anything that is behind them, basically. 1 Destrier with sword and Gatling gun. 1 Errant with, a really big Melta gun and then like a reasonable like melee sweep. 2 Helverins, and then 2 Warglaves. And so I look at this and I immediately go, well, the defender has that 4-up invul, which is already a bit of a problem. He's playing Free Blade, so it's the 6-up Feel No Pain. And they also heal 1 every single turn. And then the Destrier. And the Destrier just goes really fast. Its toughness 10 and has 18 wounds. With the 6-up Feel No Pain, it's effectively 21 wounds. And it can just kind of go wherever it wants. So I tell my team pretty much immediately, this is going to be a rough one. I don't really have the tools necessary. If I'd had all those Lascannons that I was potentially looking at taking in the first place, this would probably be totally fine. I can try and like split up the game and just play in different sides of the board. It's going to be tough trying to actually kill his stuff. And because like one of the big things that like Scions really rely on in order to like play these kinds of games is the fact that your Kasrkin and your engineers, they need to be able to kill some of the small stuff that when you drop the big stuff, you can actually like kill it because the big stuff has to be touching objectives. But one of the main worries that I had in this game was the fact that because we're playing on this, and if Jake just like has his army, arrayed kind of like this, whatever. So I know this was the Destrier, and I think it was defender here, Errant, something like that. And then I don't remember what the rest of it was. But if he just like goes first and just like runs at me, I'm in trouble. Like I'm in big trouble because I will not be able to like drop my Scions in useful spots. I will not be able to push buttons anywhere. So I end up putting a unit with the Meltas and Nork and Scions, and they just hung out back over here. The Cadian brick kind of came out over here, and then we would go from there. I told my team immediately, I'm probably looking at like a 6 here, and we'll see how it goes. And I think there were like 2 really important moments in this game. The first one was the fact that I went first this time. If I go second, it probably loses me like 2 differential kind of on the spot. But what it meant was that I had put like Cadian Recon like here and another one like here, trying to stop the Destrier that had deployed here from just kind of like running at me because it goes 14 plus access to advance and shoot and also access to auto 9-inch advance. And this was able to come here, push the button here. This was able to push the button here. And then I had a Chimera like scout up, and the Chimera, which doesn't really contribute any damage at all, just come over here and push this button here. So that was an immediate 13 points of primary I get, and this is plus 10. And this is plus 10 simply because I can touch this button and this button. But after that, I knew the game was mostly going to be about like this Cadian break was going to come over here. It was going to put enough OC on this objective in a way that it was mostly hidden. And I was going to try and push this button over and over again. So I got a 13, and my goal was to go like 7, 7, 7, 7 from there on. The other really big thing that I wanted to do was my opponent put an armiger, I think it was a Helverin, over here, and I wanted to make sure I could like push buttons on his home at least once or twice. So I took a unit of Scions over here with the express goal of I was just going to try and kill this thing. I committed the ignores cover. I committed my full reroll hits stratagem. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but math says that this thing dies 47.4% of the time with the buffs that I gave it, which is a coin flip, right? That's close enough to a coin flip that humans won't be able to tell the difference. and I won the coin flip. And what that means was that with enough of my opponent's army like pushed up in general, it meant that I was going to be able to drop Aquilons over here later, and they were going to be able to push up on my opponent's home, gain a couple of extra points that way. There were another couple of funny dice rolls in this game. So one of the funny dice rolls was Jake put his Destrier somewhere over here, and I had like Kasrkin and like a Chimera and like some parts of like the Cadians, and then they were all so kind of like spread out, something like this, and Gaunt's ghosts that were set up over here, all trying to shoot at the Destrier. I got the Destrier, all the shooting down to 2 wounds. Okay. And my thought here, the thing that I was going to try and do was that I was going to take the Kasrkin and they were going to run up and they were going to throw the Melta mine. Right? It's going to be a minimum of 2 damage if it goes off. And realistically, probably 4. And then you'll have like a couple of chances to roll some 6 of Feel No Pains. But it should be okay. The thing should probably die. And then I can consolidate back to at least getting cover on the next turn. I rolled a 1. I did no damage. And I was like, uh-oh. The Destrier is now suddenly here. So anyway, on the next turn, the Destrier, who goes up to 3 wounds, ends up moving in, shoots a little bit of something. I don't remember. Maybe it shoots like guys on his home objective. Or no, he shoots like the Kasrkin there's like a couple Kasrkins still inside. And then the Destrier makes a charge and ends up like here. And the Destrier was in a spot where it was touching like a couple of the Cadians that were here. And it was also in the Chimera. And this is where I'm like, okay, reminder, before you do this charge, I do have the on my position stratagem, which happens at the end of the charge phase. I'm going to use it. He goes like, yes, okay, cool, I know. He goes up to 3 wounds because he's on Freeblade Company. And I'm like, okay, on a 2+, I do d6 damage to you. I rolled a 1. So I don't even get the chance to roll to see how many I kill. And then I kill like 5 of my own, which at least gets like, this unit is too far because he based himself on that Chimera, and then I won't be in combat with the Cadian, so I don't like risk losing the Castellan and risk instantly losing the game. I do end up killing the Destrier on the next turn with like a grenade or something, but I was just like, ugh, what is happening? Why is this guy still alive? That's 2 times that like my mortals just don't go off. So maybe I get like another diff there if like things go well. I turn that 6 into a 7. But either way, I think these are like the main dice rolls that ended up having big deals. Of course, winning this coin flip here, killing the Armiger, and then losing both of these like 2+ in a row was a little frustrating. Like I still could have rolled like a 2 or like a 1 or a 2 on the number of mortals I do, or you could have like rolled some good Feel No Pains. Like the second one maybe doesn't kill the Destrier, the first one very likely does. But either way, it was just like, these are honestly the 2 dice rolls that I think had the biggest impact on the game. Yeah, this one, we kind of knew it was going to be tough. It was going to be really hard for me to like take away my opponent's expansion. It was going to be fairly difficult for my opponent to stop me from holding my expansion. My opponent maxed primary on turn 4, which is just kind of how it goes because he's playing those knights. He can run up and like push buttons at the same time that he's actually shooting. He had a beacon that lasted the entire game. He drew it on turn 1 and finally scored it on turn 5, which is pretty funny. Yeah, I ended up drawing like not super great on secondaries overall. Just wasn't really able to score them. My opponent ended up maxing out on all of his secondaries, which was pretty cool. He got the full 100, but I was just like scrapping for points. My whole goal again was like, if I can get the 13, 7, 7, 7, 7, 4 7s at 28, 38, 41. And then if I can push the button on his home 1 time, that gets me to 43 primary. So even though I was like getting close to tabled, and it's just, he had a Warglaive on my home objective relatively early on. I was still, I still scored 43 primary. That's pretty cool. This one, I came back with exactly what I told my team. I got the 6 to the 14. Overall, the rest of my team did pretty well. The 2 big swingers, YQ and Jensen, came back with a 20 and a 16 respectively. And then everybody else got like in the range that they were kind of expecting. Paul got an 11. Timothy got an 8. I came back with a 6, which is what I told them. So like, doing the thing that I was saying was going to do. And Wesley came back with an 11. So we did get our 2 big wins and then 4 like known draws, or 3 known draws and 1 known loss. So we got the 2 big wins, which were bigger than the loss. So, even though this was one of my worst scores, I did what I said I was going to do, which is good. For our last round, I ended up playing against Custodes again, playing up against Will and his Custodes. This one was Shield Host, which is the crit 5s, or the +1 AP sometimes, and Tyrannotoi Hammer Blow, which is like mini Lions of the Emperor. Will was playing a Blade Champ with 5 Custodians, a Blade Champ with 5 Custodians, 2 units of 4 Custodian Guard, 1 unit of 2 Alaris Custodians, 2 units of 5 Alaris Custodians, 2 units of Prosecutors, and 3 units of Witch Seekers. This was, once again, a priority assets mirror, and this time it was the only time in the entire event where I got board choice. I was either going to be one of the 5th or 6th players and just kind of played whatever, or I was used as an attacker in order to try and blunt some of our opponent's big scores. Now, this one was going to be an interesting game, right? One of my opponent's big things was he had the 12 Alaris, 5, and then a 2. And he called them the divorced dads, and they were going to be splitting up and running around the board kind of as they were. But he had the 2 units of Wardens. They go 6, they advance and charge. I think it's only once per game. Yeah, they can only advance and charge once per game. And this game got weird very quickly. Once again, I went first. I did a similar thing. I put a Chimera, like here, touch this one. I think it was Cadian Recon, once again here, and then again Cadian Recon, like doing the action over here. And Will had a unit of Wardens that were like here, and then a unit of Wardens that were like, they weren't the closest thing here. Like the Alaris was like a little bit closer, but it was like Wardens here as well. And so he goes in, we go into his turn, and the first thing he does, he's like, I'm gonna roll in advance in these Wardens. And he just rolls a natty 6. And he goes, that's interesting. So he took these, and they went 12 inches directly this way, with the idea that they were going to try and charge into this. And then he goes over to the other unit of Wardens. He's like, all right, I'm rolling advance on these guys. He rolls a 2. And he's like, I'm going to CP reroll that. I go, sure. So he CP rerolls that, and he rolls a 6. And I go, oh no. So these Wardens come out 12 inches, something like this. And I also had like unit of Engineers and like Kasrkin, and he goes to roll his charges. And this rolls a 10. And this, I think it rolls like a 4 or something, and it misses. And then he's like, just kidding. Blade Champ rolls an 8. And so I just go, oh, this is not what I was expecting. This unit over here just moved 6 plus 10 is 22 inches. And it meant that they got to come in and like touch these Kasrkin and the Engineers, which was bad for me. And then this one came over here and it touched like these Recon. And then the Recon died, unsurprisingly. The Chimera died because like there were guys, something like this. I lost like 4 of these, and then I lost like 3 or 4 of these. He rolled a little bit low into the Kasrkin and the Engineers. But this is what the game looked like. So going into my turn 2, there was a unit of Wardens, something like this, and there's like 2 or 3 guys like touching here. There's another unit of Wardens. They were all here. And this is where one of the main things that you have to be very careful of when you're playing up against a unit of Wardens, or when you're playing up against Custodes, is you need to be careful not to all in into the Feel No Pains unless you really, really have to. And so what I ended up doing is the unit Kasrkin, I did some coherency tricks such that the unit was here, it fell back into a Chimera over here so it could still firing deck. The one dude over here was able to like throw a mine. I put like my Lascannons up here. And then I took the Cadian break, which was over here before. It was touching the objective, but I had not put enough because I did not expect all of the Wardens to be on this objective previously. And I just put, the Cadian brick here. I dropped some like Aquilons over here trying to like kill girls, something like that. I go and I ask, would you like to declare your Feel No Pains? Or I throw my bombs first because like, this one in particular, this one has to go first because the way that sequencing works now is I do my optionals, or I do my mandatories, then I do my optionals, then my opponent does their mandatories, then my opponent does my optionals. And because I do my optionals before they do their optionals, my morals will always go off first. I think I'll set up another unit of Kasrkin like here. But anyway, I'm set up in a spot where, I've got Kasrkin, Cadians, Kasrkin, Lascannons, and then like some extra little damage. I have like my Cadian Recon like over here. And then I go again, do you want to do your Feel No Pains? And he goes, I'm going to pop both of them. And from there, both of us kind of expected that each unit would lose about 2 Custodians in the shooting phase. I roll a little bit low here. I kill like 1 out of this unit. I kill about 2 out of this unit in the shooting phase. So pretty close to what we were actually expecting. Then I charge Norkin over here, kill like another 2. So this went from 5 plus the Blade Champ down to 1 plus the Blade Champ. And then this one was still 4 plus the Blade Champ. So I rolled a little bit, but not, not by all that much. So it kind of is what it is. But the plan here is I was going to be using these assets, and then I was going to follow it up with Scion drop after all the wardens had used up all their fill no pains. Because we go into the next turn, there's like an Alaris brick here, a Custodian brick here, there's like 2 dudes here, there's like 5 dudes here, there's some girls scattered around the board, and then there's like a solo Alaris here and like a solo Alaris in space or something like that. And he does a little bit of damage. I end up dropping like another unit of Aquilons like over here, trying to put enough OC on the objective. And then when I drop, I like kill the one girl off of here because it had been like a girl like here or something that had like run. It was like over here. I don't remember exactly how. Oh no, I killed like most of it with like a Chimera, so there's like only one like left here. But regardless, I killed the girl off here, and then he hits the natty 9 once again into these Aquilons, denies me another point of primary over here. So he's actually gotten like 2. So like the one kind of long charge over here on turn 1, and then the 9-inch charge back into the objective immediately afterwards. Ends up costing me 8 primary, which is like whatever. I still scored 45 because that's how 11th edition works, baby. But this was all kind of like known. Like I kind of knew that this is going to be what it was going to kind of look like in general. And then I drop all of my Scions over here, right? He's got 4 Custodian Guard. Here, he rapid ingresses them. I got my Lascannons, and then I got like the Cadian Recon. And then between all of this, like a Melta gun kills 1, and then the Lascannons kill 2 more. So like this goes down to like 1, which is kind of funny. But I drop both units of Scions over here. And this is where the game gets like a little bit interesting because there's still like wardens over here. There's still like an Alaris brick that has already like done its up down or whatever, and so like they're all over here. But then the whole thing becomes like I'm going to be shooting at a bunch of 4-up invuls. I was able to get like the ignores cover off on like both of these units, I believe, and so the Scions come here. The very first thing I do is I take the Melta plasma unit and like split fire it, and I put like the plasma here and like the Meltas here, and I actually do pretty good. I kill like 3 Custodian Guard and then like 2 Alaris with this shooting, and then the second unit goes and it kills the remaining 2 Alaris, and then it kills the remaining Custodian Guard over here. So I just kill both these units. I chip down like the last warden here, and so the game basically becomes this side of the board belongs to Will, and I cannot do a whole lot about it. But this side of the board like belongs to me, and Will can't do a whole lot about it. And when this happens, it becomes a game of both of you are very likely to max primary because I'm pushing the button over here. He's pushing the button down here. So we're both getting a ton of primary. We're both getting like minimum 9 every turn, sometimes 12s. Because I went first and I got my 13 at the very beginning. Like, that is plenty in order to actually max out primary. And then we get to the last turn. And I did think it was a little bit funny because he does make another 9-inch charge. He was really good at these. He had like the one solo Lars Custodian that hadn't done his up down come over here, hit his 9-inch charge into a Scion brick, and then I did a coherency trick, which I can actually show you guys. It's already a long video, and I feel like it. So there's like a bunch of Scions like over here, right? This is like 8 or something, and then I go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and like the character over here, something like this. And this Alaris comes over here, hits the 9-inch charge into the character, and he kills like 4 guys out of this unit. So now you can obviously see this unit is no longer in coherency. I elect, I'm going to take this part out. So this character dies to coherency, but there is just a custodian Alaris just like hanging out over here. And this I did find it was a little bit funny because he had just watched like 2 Silent Bricks clear 4. No, this was 5 Alaris and then 4 Custodian Guard. He had seen these 2 units do that. And then I'm like, hey, they can't shoot at anything else. I'm going to take both these Scion units and they are going to just kill this dude. Would you like me to roll it? And he goes, absolutely. And I go, okay. Because I'm like, the odds of you living are in like the 1 in 1,000 kind of thing. But it is what it is. I killed the unit. And then yeah, that was basically it. The game just became this belongs to me. This belongs to him. We both scored 90 something. I scored 93. At the very end, he had like bring it down. I had like a Chimera here, and he had like it was like Warden Blade Champ or something, and he was like, "I'm gonna charge this thing," and I go, "Wait a second, before you do, I don't care. We can finish it up. Let's just see if it matters." Because for me it would be +1 burden, and then for him it would be +5 bring it down. But I was at 93 without it, and he was at 92 without it. So like this is a 1 point difference, which means it's a 10-10. And then if he gets to bring it down, goes up to 97. Cool. That's still less than a 5 point difference. It's still a 10-10. And then if he doesn't, and I get my burn of trust, go up to 94, 94, 92, it's still a 10-10. So I was like, look, dude, I'm happy to give you. I'm happy to say you kill this. You kill this Chimera. Take the 10-10 singles win. Happy for you. And we came back. This one ended up also being a draw. We had a couple tables go poorly. Unfortunately, Paul came back with a 1. I came back with a 10. I said this would probably be a 10 to 12, so I think this is within variance. Timothy got a really big win. Apparently, he like battle shocked the Tau player on like turn 1 or 2 with the Shadow and the Warp, and then the Tau player just never unbattle shocked. So that was pretty funny. Jensen came back with a small win. We heard from their side that they were expecting this to be a pretty big win for the Space Wolves, so the fact that Jensen came back with a win is pretty good. Wesley came back with a win. I did not hear as much about this game. And then YQ ended up coming back with a 3. This was one that we were expecting to be a big win for us, but what I'm told is that like Fulgrim went in, left a big knight on 1, and that big knight just killed him back. And Fulgrim just like full to dead just died on the swing back because the knight was left on 1. So we had this one. I don't know what this was matrixed as. This one we were expecting to be pretty good, and this one was a big flip. And then this one they were expecting to be pretty good, so this was like a medium flip. But overall, we had 1 big win, 2 medium wins, and a draw, but 2 big losses. And so it ends up coming out to a draw 59 to 61. So overall at this event, I felt, fairly happy. We ended up playing up against Team SA. This was the one that we lost by, 2 points. So very close to a draw up against the team that got second. We beat this team very handily in the second round, 82 to 38. So we played against these two. We got a draw against 5th place in round 5. We got a decent sized win up against Light and Approved in round 4, and then we beat this team in round 1. So we ended up playing up against the team that got second, close loss. We handily beat the team that got third, and then we got a draw against the team that got 5th. We managed to dodge the team that got first, which maybe helped out our tiebreakers a little bit. But playing up against a lot of the teams that were doing quite well, we were pretty, at least I was pretty happy with. I'm not sure how the rest of the team felt. So anyway, that's how the event went. I was pretty, I had a good time. It was good seeing my buddy Jensen once again. He was the guy, I've mentioned him before. He's the guy that like kicked my ass a bunch of times in a row until I learned how to play competitive 9th edition. And so it was fun just like playing with him, seeing him do well, playing with a new group of guys, and also just like having the trust of someone being willing to like fly me across the Pacific for an event. I'd be super down to do it again, depending. They asked if I would be willing to mark for them potentially for WTC Team Singapore in the future. I don't know if I'd end up doing that. I really enjoy being a fly on the wall in the Team USA Discord. Maybe for something where I don't have to give up some of my privileges. Regardless, though, I had a good time. It was great going to see all the Australian guys. To everyone that I saw at the event or in Sydney, thank you so much. It was a ton of fun. You guys were super hospitable. Everyone in Australia was super hospitable. I was very impressed in general. I have another teams event coming up this weekend in Portland, so I'm going to be playing there with Deep Strike Gang. I'll let you know how that one goes next week. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.